Going undercover to infiltrate Vincent Torrino's national network was supposed to be my redemption arc. The FBI promised me a new identity, protection, and a chance to take down the people who were poisoning communities across America. What they didn't tell me was that Vincent had been expecting me, that he'd been planning for the moment I'd try to stop him, that he'd turned my attempt at justice into a trap that would either kill me or send me to prison for the rest of my life. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and this is how I went from FBI informant to federal defendant. How my mother's trial became a media circus that destroyed what was left of my life. How trying to bring down a criminal empire made me look like the biggest criminal of all. This is the story of how the courtroom became a battlefield, and I lost every single fight. The FBI gave me a new name, Marcus Chun. They thought it was poetic, taking the name of the murder investigator who'd started this whole thing. I thought it was cursed, but I didn't have much choice in the matter. Agent Vasquez spent 3 weeks training me for the undercover operation. How to act like a real estate investor with dirty money to spend. How to approach Vincent's associates without raising suspicion. How to wear recording equipment that wouldn't be detected by the signal jammers they used. Vincent's network operates through intermediaries, Vasquez explained during one of our briefing sessions. He never deals directly with clients anymore. Too much exposure. Instead, he's got people in every major city who handle the local operations. She showed me organizational charts that looked like spider webs. Vincent at the center, connected to dozens of real estate companies, environmental consulting firms, and construction contractors across 6 cities. Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Miami, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Your job is to pose as a wealthy investor looking to develop properties in Boston. Vincent's people there are the most active right now. We've tracked at least 15 contaminated developments in the last 2 years. How do I make contact? You don't. We've already arranged for one of Vincent's associates to approach you. His name is David Park, runs a real estate consulting firm called EcoSafe Development. The name is ironic, considering they specialize in hiding environmental contamination. The FBI set me up with a backstory. Marcus Chun, tech entrepreneur who'd sold his startup for $50 million and was looking to diversify into real estate. They created fake social media accounts, planted stories in tech blogs, even arranged for me to attend industry conferences where Vincent's people would see me. The bait was simple: a wealthy investor with more money than sense, looking for high-return opportunities, and willing to cut corners to maximize profit. Exactly the kind of person Vincent's network targeted. Within 2 weeks, David Park reached out via LinkedIn. David Park was everything I'd expected from one of Vincent's associates. Mid-40s, expensive suits, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. We met at a luxury restaurant in Boston's financial district, the kind of place where appetizers cost more than most people's weekly groceries. "Marcus," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that felt like a test. "I've been hearing interesting things about you. Tech entrepreneur, looking to break into real estate development." That's right. I made my money in software, but real estate is where the real wealth is built. Smart man. Though I have to warn you, real estate development in Boston isn't like other markets. Environmental regulations here are strict. Very strict. Can make profitable projects impossible if you're not careful. This was it. The opening I'd been waiting for. I've heard there are ways to work around environmental concerns. For the right investors. David's smile widened. I represent a consulting group that specializes in exactly that. We help developers navigate complex environmental situations. Make sure projects move forward without unnecessary delays. By hiding contamination reports. He didn't flinch. By understanding that environmental concerns are often overblown. That the economic benefits of development outweigh minor soil issues. That progress requires pragmatism. Over the next hour, David laid out how Vincent's Boston operation worked. They identified contaminated industrial sites that the city wanted developed. Then they found investors willing to build residential or commercial properties without full environmental remediation. In exchange for bribes, city officials approved projects that should have been blocked. How much contamination are we talking about? I asked, my hidden recorder capturing everything. Nothing that will cause immediate health problems. Cancer takes years to develop. Birth defects don't show up until people have already moved away. By the time anyone connects health issues to contamination, the properties have changed hands 3 or 4 times. No liability. My stomach turned, but I kept my expression neutral. Sounds like a solid business model. It's been very profitable. We've developed 17 properties in Boston over the last 3 years. Average profit margin, 300%. Our investors are very happy. I'd like to meet them, see the operation firsthand. David studied my face for a long moment. That can be arranged. But first, we need to verify your credentials. Make sure you're someone we can trust. How do you do that? We have someone in prison who vets all our new investors. Very thorough background checks. If he approves you, you're in. If not..." David's smile disappeared. "Well, let's just say rejection has consequences." My blood went cold. "Who's your guy in prison?" "Vincent Torrino. You may have heard of him. He's serving 25 years for environmental crimes, but he still runs our network from inside. Very hands-on management style." Vincent knew I was coming. This whole setup was a trap. Agent Vasquez wanted to abort the operation immediately. If Vincent knows you're coming, he'll kill you the moment you walk into that prison. "Maybe not," I argued. "Vincent kept me alive before because I was useful. Maybe he still thinks I can be useful. Or maybe he wants the satisfaction of killing you himself." But we both knew the operation was too important to abort. Vincent's network was poisoning communities across the country. If we backed out now, thousands more people would be exposed to contamination before we got another chance. The FBI arranged the prison visit under my Marcus Chin identity with extra security measures. Guards who were actually federal agents. Hidden panic buttons. Extraction plans if things went wrong. Vincent was waiting for me in a private meeting room, wearing an orange jumpsuit that somehow still looked expensive on him. 25 years in federal prison hadn't diminished his presence. If anything, he seemed more dangerous than before. "Michael Rodriguez," he said as I sat down. "Not Marcus Chun. Michael Rodriguez. Or should I call you Marcus?" Nice touch, using the dead man's name. Very symbolic. "You knew I was coming." "I've known since the moment you agreed to work with the FBI. Did you really think I wouldn't have sources inside the Bureau? People who owe me favors? People who don't want their own crimes exposed?" He leaned forward, eyes cold as winter. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue your undercover operation. You're going to gather evidence against David Park and the Boston operation. You're going to help the FBI shut it all down." Why would you want that? Because David has been skimming profits, taking money that belongs to me, using my network for his own benefit. I want him gone, and you're going to help me eliminate him. Vincent was using me to clean house, using the FBI to take out people in his organization who'd become problems. And if I refuse, then I release evidence showing that you've been profiting from contaminated real estate all along. Documents showing you knew about your mother's operation for years. Financial records showing you took millions in blood money. By the time I'm done, you won't just lose your immunity deal, you'll be serving life in prison right next to me. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, property records, and emails that appeared to show me actively participating in my mother's crimes. All of it was fake, expertly forged, but convincing enough to destroy my immunity agreement. You see, Michael, I've been preparing for this moment since the day you exposed my operation. I knew eventually you'd try to take down the rest of my network. So I created insurance. Evidence that makes you look just as guilty as everyone else. I reported Vincent's threats to Agent Vasquez immediately. She brought in the FBI's forensics team to examine the forged documents. These are good, one analyst admitted. Really good. Someone with serious resources created these forgeries. Banking records, email metadata, property transactions, all of it looks legitimate. But it's not real, I insisted. I never knew about my mother's operation until I bought that first house. We believe you, Vasquez said. But Vincent's right about one thing. If these documents go public, they'll destroy your immunity deal. The prosecutor who negotiated your agreement will have grounds to revoke it. So what do? You have three options. 1. We abort the undercover operation and Vincent releases the forged evidence. You lose immunity and probably go to prison. 2. You continue the operation and help Vincent eliminate David Park, knowing you're being used to settle criminal scores. 3. You testify about Vincent's threats, which triggers an investigation that could take years while your immunity deal hangs in limbo. None of the options were good. All of them ended with me losing something: freedom, integrity, or justice. That night, unable to sleep, I called my real mother from my FBI safe house. She was living under protective custody too, her testimony against my criminal mother having made her a target for revenge. Mom, did Dad ever face choices like this? Impossible situations where every option was wrong. Your father spent 3 months trying to figure out how to expose your mother's crimes without destroying our family, she said quietly. He knew that if he went to the authorities, you and I would lose everything. But if he stayed quiet, more people would die. What did he decide? He decided that doing the right thing was more important than protecting our comfort. That's why she had him killed. The next morning, I made my decision. I would continue the undercover operation, but I wouldn't help Vincent eliminate David Park just to settle criminal grudges. Instead, I'd gather evidence against everyone, Vincent's people and Vincent himself. Find proof that he was still running criminal operations from inside prison. Agent Vasquez approved the plan, but with a warning. If Vincent realizes you're playing both sides, he won't just release forged documents. He'll have you killed, immunity deal or not. While I was running my undercover operation in Boston, my mother's trial began in Manhattan. Federal court, live television coverage, media circus atmosphere that made the O.J. Simpson trial look subdued by comparison. The prosecution had overwhelming evidence, decades of contaminated property development, bribes to officials, dozens of murders to cover up crimes. My testimony would be the centerpiece of their case, the son who'd exposed his own mother's killing spree. But my mother's defense attorney, Marcus Goldstein, no relation to the name I was using Undercover, had a different strategy. He wasn't going to argue innocence. He was going to put the entire real estate industry on trial. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Goldstein began in his opening statement, my client stands accused of environmental crimes. But what she really did was participate in a system that has operated this way for decades. A system where developers, city officials, and environmental regulators all profit from contaminated development. A system where every major real estate company in America has cut corners on environmental cleanup. It was brilliant and terrifying. Goldstein was arguing that my mother was just the fall guy for an entire industry's crimes. The prosecution called witness after witness. EPA scientists who testified about contamination levels. Doctors who described patients with cancer and birth defects. FBI agents who explained the bribery network. And eventually they called me. Walking into that courtroom felt like walking to my own execution. My mother sat at the defense table, wearing an expensive suit and showing no emotion. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw something there I couldn't quite identify. Hatred, disappointment, resignation. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, led me through my testimony. How I'd discovered the contamination. How I'd gathered evidence. How I'd learned my mother was behind everything. Mr. Rodriguez, Walsh asked, did your mother ever express remorse for the people who died because of her crimes? No. She told me they were acceptable casualties. The cost of doing business. Then came cross-examination. Marcus Goldstein approached the witness stand with the confidence of a lawyer who'd found a weakness. Mr. Rodriguez, you lived off your mother's profits for 22 years, correct? I didn't know where the money came from. But you enjoyed the benefits. Nice clothes, good food, comfortable home. All paid for with what you now call blood money. Yes, but I didn't know. And when you discovered your mother's crimes, your first action wasn't to call the police. It was to continue flipping houses. To make more profit from contaminated properties. That's not accurate. I was gathering evidence. Evidence you gathered by committing breaking and entering, by illegally recording conversations, by participating in the very criminal enterprise you claim to oppose. Goldstein was destroying me on the stand, making me look like a hypocrite who'd profited from crimes before turning on my family to save myself. Mr. Rodriguez, isn't it true that you only cooperated with the FBI after you were caught? After Vincent Torrino threatened to kill you? I cooperated because it was the right thing to do. Or because it was the only way to save your own skin. The testimony lasted 4 hours. By the end, I felt like I was the one on trial, not my mother. The jury deliberated for 6 days. 6 days of media speculation, cable news debates, and social media arguments about whether my mother was a criminal mastermind or a scapegoat for systemic corruption. When they returned with a verdict, the courtroom was packed with reporters, victims' families, and people whose lives had been destroyed by contaminated housing. On the count of racketeering, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of environmental terrorism, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all 37 counts. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month, but everyone knew what was coming. Multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. As guards led my mother out of the courtroom, she looked at me one final time. I built an empire, she said. You destroyed it for nothing. The system will continue. Other companies will fill the void. People will keep dying. And it will all be for nothing. She was right about one thing. Other companies were already filling the void. That's why I was still undercover in Boston, gathering evidence against Vincent's network. But the trial's aftermath created a new problem. Goldstein's defense strategy had worked too well, not at acquitting my mother, but at creating reasonable doubt about the entire real estate industry. Suddenly, everyone was questioning whether environmental regulations were being enforced anywhere. Congress launched investigations into EPA practices. State attorneys general started examining real estate developments across the country. The federal government announced a massive environmental audit of urban housing. The economic impact was catastrophic. Real estate development ground to a halt nationwide. Banks stopped approving construction loans. Property values continued falling. The crash that had started in Manhattan was now spreading across America. And I was being blamed for all of it. Death threats escalated. Someone mailed a package to my FBI safe house containing a dead rat and a note, "You're next, Rodriguez." Protesters gathered outside the courthouse during sentencing, half demanding my mother receive the death penalty, half demanding I be prosecuted for destroying the economy. Agent Vasquez showed me intelligence reports about 3 separate groups planning to kill me. We need to move you again. New safe house, new city, maybe even witness protection outside the country. What about the Boston operation? David Park and Vincent's network. It's too dangerous. You're too exposed. We'll find another way to investigate them. But I couldn't quit. Not when Vincent's network was still operating. Not when 100,000 people were living in contaminated housing. Not when my father had died trying to stop exactly this kind of crime. I'm finishing this, I told Vasquez. Whatever it takes. 3 days later, I received an encrypted message on my phone. David Park wants to meet you tomorrow. Says he has a proposition you can't refuse. Vincent says this is your chance to prove loyalty. Don't screw it up. Anonymous. The trap was set. The question was whether I was walking into it or whether I was finally about to spring one of my own. Either way, tomorrow would determine whether I survived to tell the rest of this story.